Well, here anyway, the people that shall come, which was Rome, they would destroy the sanctuary, and out of that people, the Roman Empire, would come this man who would be the world ruler then at the end. Now then, verse 27, this great world ruler who will come on the scene out of the revived Roman Empire, which of course we're seeing in Europe, he will confirm the covenant with many, now that's Israel, for 7 years. Now I know a lot of our prophetic preachers, as soon as that so-called peace treaty was signed, then they jumped on the bandwagon, and then they came back and said, well, see, Daniel said he would merely confirm that this is the peace treaty, and then the Antichrist would confirm it. Well, who am I to disagree with them, but I am, because that peace treaty that was signed last fall is no peace treaty at all. Very few people understand the feeling of the Israeli people in general. And from what you've been seeing in the news the last couple of weeks, there's no peace in Israel tonight. And in fact, we were more or less scheduled, you know, to take another tour over there, but I'm glad now we didn't because of the turmoil. But there hasn't been a peace treaty signed yet. It's coming. And how it will lay out, I of course don't pretend to know, but they are going to sign a peace treaty with this individual who I feel will come up out of the European community now, the revived Roman Empire. He's going to sign a 7-year treaty, and the day that he signs that treaty, the clock kicks in gear. Now up until then, God's time clock has stopped. We know that from the crucifixion and the resurrection, when Israel rejected everything concerning the Old Testament prophecies, God's clock stopped. And we have the church age, an undeterminate period of time that no one can set a date on. No one should even try to guess, because that's strictly in the mind of God. But once this man signs this treaty with Israel, then the clock kicks back in gear, and there's going to be 7 years. Just no argument about it. There will be 7 distinct calendar years, scriptural years. Now remember, a year in Scripture is 12 30-day months, 360 days in a year. So in the middle of the 7 years, in the middle of the week, he, this one that shall come, we call him the Antichrist, he will cause the sacrifice and the oblation to stop. Now, where and where only can the Jews offer sacrifices and oblations? At the temple. So we know they have to have a temple, plus the fact that Jesus said they would have it. So here in the middle of the 7 years, this man is going to come and demand or command that all sacrificial worship and all the temple worship of Israel will come to an end. And then, to make it even the more hideous, he will cause an abomination, the overspreading of abominations. He shall make it, the temple, desolate. Now, I personally think that Antiochus Epiphanes, the little Syrian dictator that I think was a type of the Antichrist back in Daniel's prophecy, and I think he's also referred to in Isaiah, he was a pipsqueak in history. He didn't amount to much, but he's a big deal in Scripture because he defiled the temple by sacrificing a hog, a sow, on the altar. And of course the swine's blood was the abomination. And I think that's what this man will do. I think he'll do much the same thing. In fact, several months ago, some secular Jews who were trying to make their point against the Orthodox Jews. Now, you know, there's quite a difference of opinion, even in Israel, between the Orthodox Jews and the secular Jews. And so here, several months ago, I remember it was in the Jerusalem Post, where some of these secular Jews had smeared swine's blood on a synagogue. And now you can just about imagine what that would do to an Orthodox Jew. So I think that's what the Antichrist will do as well. He will perform that abomination of desolation by sacrificing an old hog on that beautiful temple altar that Israel will no doubt have rebuilt. And then everything, Daniel goes on to say, that's been determined, everything that's been prophesied will be poured out upon the desolate, or the desolator is a better word, which of course is the man Antichrist. Now this is what Jesus is referring to, that in the midpoint of the tribulation, this man will come into Jerusalem, come into the temple, and will defile it. All right, now then come back with me, if you will, to Matthew 24. And so Jesus is talking to Jews again, strictly to Jews. And so to the Jews he says, even though it's 2,000 years down the road, verse 16, then let them who be in Judea, now remember that's the area around Jerusalem and southern Israel, flee to the mountains. Let him who is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house, because time is of the essence, and they aren't going to need it anyway. And remember, this is an analogy to the escape out of Egypt. Much of it is a parallel. And just as God protected and provided for the Jews in the wilderness, he's going to protect and provide for these escaping Jews coming out of the environs of Jerusalem at the midpoint of the tribulation. Now, this is not the 144,000. This is a cross-section of any society. Here we're going to have men, women, young women, children, the whole cross-section fleeing from Jerusalem. All right, start with verse 17. Let him who is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house. Now, I've taught this before. We'll just review it quickly. This is no doubt a retired individual who has become quite well-to-do. He's no longer working, and he's probably got a lot of things in his house that he'd like to hang on to. Maybe he's collected antiques or beautiful furniture, but he's not going to have time or opportunity to take any of those things with him. He says, you better move out. The next one is the worker, the working class. And he speaks specifically of agricultural workers. Let him who is in the field, let him not return back to take his clothes. He's not going to have time. He better just take the clothes on his back and get out of Jerusalem. Verse 19, another group that's going to be involved are those that are with child. That'd be the younger generation, the young girls, the young women. Those that are with child, and those that are nursing. Now here you have not only the mother, but her offspring. She's going to have to carry them, see? So you've got a whole cross-section of the older retired, the working class, and now the younger mothers and their offspring. Verse 20, pray that your flight be not in the winter, nor on the Sabbath day, because, see, they're going to be back under the law. And see, Israel's getting closer. There's a law in the Knesset right now to reestablish the Sabbath. It hasn't passed yet because the secular end of it are still too strong. But the bill is there, and if they can ever get it passed, they'll reinstitute shutting everything down on the Sabbath, which means they can't walk over about, what, a half a mile? Now, you wouldn't even get out of Jerusalem tonight if the law said you can't walk over half a mile. So Jesus said you better pray that this day to flee will not be on a Sabbath day, so that you won't be breaking the law to leave the several miles that it's going to take. And, of course, hope that it's not in the winter. Because, you know, I'm a northerner by birth, and I've experienced a lot of 35, 40 below zero weather. But if I had to go someplace on foot, I'd rather do it in the heat of the day as in the cold of winter. And so he's referring to that it not be in the winter or on a Sabbath day. And then verse 21, here's the reason. For then, at this midpoint, for then shall be, what's the word? Great tribulation. Great. Far greater than even the first 3.5 years. For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the age to this time, nor ever should be in the future. And all you have to do is just reflect back over Israel's history. They've gone through some horrible days, haven't they? And yet none of that is going to compare to what they're going to have to go through in these final 3.5 years. And then verse 22, Jesus said that these days are going to be so horrendous. They are going to take so much life that he says, except those days should be shortened. Now, as I understand that Greek word shortened, I think it's unfortunate the way it's been translated here. It does not mean that it's going to back up a month or two, and it doesn't mean that it might be extended. It just simply means unless those days would end right on schedule. 3.5 years and 3.5 years. That's 1,260 days and another 1,260 days. If it would happen to go on another 10, 12 days, no one would survive. But we know there's going to be some survivors, and we'll probably pick that up in our next program. So he says, except those days should be shortened, or rather end right on schedule, there should no flesh be saved. But for the elect's sake, in other words, for the sake of believers, those days shall be shortened or end on schedule and not be prolonged, because it's going to be, like I said, such a tremendous loss of life because of natural calamity, earthquake, volcanoes, cosmic disturbances. I think there's going to be great meteor storms. But not only that, but the political and the military ramifications are going to take such a heavy toll of life. And then verse 23, when things get tough, see, then people turn religious, don't they? But then he says, be careful. For then, if any man say unto you, Lo, here is Christ, here's the Messiah, or there, believe it not. For there shall arise, here comes the warning, as we saw back in the first half of the chapter, for there shall arise false Christs, false prophets, who shall show, now watch this, they're going to show great signs and wonders. Where are they going to get their power? Not from God, from the devil, from Satan. And they're going to show great signs and wonders, insomuch that if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect. In other words, those who are believers and are still surviving. Verse 25, behold, Jesus said, I have told you before. And here he reminds them again. Now this is all for emphasis. Wherefore, if they shall say unto you, behold, he, the Messiah, is in the desert, go not forth. Behold, he is in secret chambers. Don't you believe it? Because he's not going to be coming from those areas. He's going to be coming from where? He's going to be coming from heaven. And by the time the tribulation is ended, of course, it will be time for the second coming, when he will come in power and glory, and he will destroy all the nations that have been gathered there in the Middle East under the power of the Antichrist, and he will return to where? The Mount of Olives, which is on the east.
Thank you for watching Through the Bible with Les Feldick, a weekly Bible study. If you would like more information about the Les Feldick Ministries, a Bible study in your area, or about this program, write to Les Feldick Ministries, Route 1, Box 760, Kinta, Oklahoma, 74552. That's Route 1, Box 760, Kinta, Oklahoma, 74552. Through the Bible with Les Feldick is viewer supported, and your gift is appreciated. Thank you, and be sure to tune in next time for Through the Bible with Les Feldick.